If this was a U.S. horse and we were getting U.S. race after U.S. race after U.S. race, where do you think Forever Young would stack up? Because you mentioned he's over $30 million in earnings now. He's won a Breeders' Cup Classic, 2 Saudi Cups. He ran very well in the Kentucky Derby. Kind of got played little bumper cars down the stretch, cost him that race as well. If Forever Young was based in the U.S., where do you think the legacy would stand versus where it currently stands?
It would be 10 times more than it already is, I think.
This is VSiN at the Track. Now here's your hosts, Mike Somich and Aaron Halterman.
Welcome in here, another VSiN at the Track. I am Mike Somich. He is Aaron Halterman, and we have got to talk 3-year-olds because obviously we're into the Derby trail here. Paladin returns, looks very good at Fairgrounds. We'll get into that. We've got a couple more. We got another 3-year-old prep coming from Turfway Park as well, and it's going to be a fun weekend here. It's not the star-studded weekend that we've gotten used to the last couple weekends. A little bit of a slull here in the Triple Crown Trail, but we still have other stakes races to cover. We got some Friday action, Saturday action, Sunday action, some best bets. But we'll kick it off, Aaron. How you doing, man?
Doing good. It is kind of a break, isn't it? I mean, we do have the Turfway race. We will talk about that, and it'll be fun. But doing great. Very excited for the show today. And look, I think it's always nice to kind of have this week to kind of reassess everything. And yeah, we'll do a little bit of that for sure. Yes,
we will. And I like your shirt there, rocking your Miracle on Ice. I'm not going to say yesterday was a miracle on ice, but, man, it was nice for the U.S. to get through 3 overtime games there. I know we're both locked in on the Olympic hockey, so excited to see the good teams move through there at least. But we'll keep an eye on that as we move forward. But we got to talk horse racing here, and we've got to start out with Forever Young, who wins back-to-back Saudi Cups there. He has basically been a globetrotter and won everywhere he's gone. Let's start out with the race. Let's start out there. What do you think of Forever Young in that spot and how he was able to hold off and kind of deny Nysos down the stretch?
Yeah, look, I thought it was a brilliant performance. It was, very exciting that we get to the top of the stretch. And the two horses that, you and I both kind of thought, okay, these are the two. They're going to square off. And it was very clear. And look, he just put Nysos away, and Nysos is not an easy horse to put away. He'd only lost once coming into that race, and it had been off of a long layoff in the slop at a distance he may not even want to go where he lost his other race. So, look, Nysos ran, I thought, his A race, and Forever Young was just better. I was a little bit anxious with Forever Young where he was placed early in the race. He was kind of down inside all the other horses in a good spot as being forward, but kind of, oh no, he's getting a lot of dirt, and will he kind of get room to run? But he sure did, and he showed he's a world-class horse. Now, back-to-back Saudi Cups, probably going to, as long as he stays healthy, he will become the richest horse of all time in the whole world. So he's second right now. He's going to be first if he makes probably one more start.
So this to me, I want to talk legacy of Forever Young and how negatively affected he is based on not being based in the U.S. Because if this was a U.S. horse and we were getting U.S. race after U.S. race after U.S. race, where do you think Forever Young would stack up? Because you mentioned he's over $30 million in earnings now. He's won a Breeders' Cup Classic, 2 Saudi Cups. He ran very well in the Kentucky Derby. Kind of got played little bumper cars down the stretch, cost him that race as well. If Forever Young was based in the U.S., where do you think the legacy would stand versus where it currently stands?
It would be 10 times more than it already is, I think. I think we would really talk about it. I think you and I and honestly probably most people that are watching this that are huge horse racing fans, that they know and understand just how good he is and how hard it is to win a Breeders' Cup Classic, which he came over here and did, and to win all these races all around the world. So yeah, he would be. Look, I kind of said after the race, we were talking about it, and I thought, I think Flightline's the best horse I've ever seen as far as just his pure talent. But when it comes to a resume, Forever Young's building one that's about as good as what we've seen since we've been following the sport. You talk about that Kentucky Derby. I want to mention that even if he just wins that one, we probably are talking about him in a different light, and he probably should have won it. And there's no question he was the best horse in the race that day and couldn't win it. How hard is it to win a Kentucky Derby when Sierra Leone and Forever Young couldn't beat Mystic Dan in that day? So it's crazy how hard it is to win that race. But like I said, hey, even if he goes over there and he wins that, and he's kind of the first international horse to win the Kentucky Derby, it puts him at this crazy level as well.
Yeah, you think about, we're going to talk about trips and what that actually means. You talk about Forever Young's trip in the Derby versus Mystic Dan's, completely different stories of how they were able to get to that finish line in first and third respectively. And you look back and you see what he's done in the U.S. It's the Kentucky Derby, it's the 2 Breeders' Cups, that's it. Imagine if this horse had won the Whitney a couple times. Imagine if this horse had kind of stacked other grade ones on top of it and then had this resume as well. I mean, we're talking about a top 5, top 10 horse all time, but we don't get to see the horse enough to actually put Forever Young at that level. I'm glad we get Forever Young back in racing. I'm excited and hoping we get Forever Young in the Breeders' Cup again. That would be an opportunity to re-cement the legacy that he already, in my mind, has cemented. But it's interesting that now we have these international horses that can become superstars inside our sport, despite not running in the U.S. all that often.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, the creation of the Saudi Cup, it hadn't been around that long, I think helps, and it helps, another big international spotlight. It also kind of hurts our races here early in the year as well, like the Pegasus World Cup is not what it used to be because, instead of Nisos going there, when it was $12 million or $16 million, now he's going to go over to Saudi, and that makes sense. I get it. I understand it. So, but yeah, it is nice to have another big day like that. And look, he runs in a different country every time he starts. Like, he's never ran in the same country 2 times in a row. The one thing I'll say, it's a little bit, it is true, obviously, that is a fact. He also only runs like 4 or 5 times a year. They space those races out and get him in tip-top shape going in there. And you can do that now because of the lucrative amount of purses available in these huge races. Back in the day, you needed a race 8 or 9 times to accumulate that kind of money. Where now, hey, spread them out, get him ready for these big ones, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's interesting just to kind of follow his career and how he has done this. You mentioned it, never run in the same country back-to-back times. And that's a testament to the fact that he can't run as many races. Because we talk about these horses being protected in the U.S. where they're not going to run, every single month. If you're traveling around the world, if you're globetrotting, you're forced to take some of these layoffs because of the quarantining in and out of country and going through that entire process. So it's just a very interesting horse from a historical perspective at this point because it again made so much money. Now obviously is dominated there, specifically at in the Saudi Cup, now 2 for 2 in that race, over $10 million earned in that race alone. So the money part isn't tough to handle when you look backwards historically because the purses have gone up so much. You've got these opportunities that you didn't have in the past, but at the same time to be able to do what he's done I think is wildly impressive. I do want to talk about Nisos before we move on. Won the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, comes back, runs huge here. Is this like officially the best horse in the U.S. going 2 turns right now in that older male division?
Well, I think it's still questionable because of journalism coming back, because of sovereignty coming back, because of Baeza coming back, and Baeza now going to Bill Mott, by the way. So that's interesting as well. So, no, I wouldn't say. I think he's right there with them. I think we've always loved Nisos, and I think we both have said, hey, as long as he's on the track and racing, he's going to be tough. His problem is, health injuries, and his health just hasn't been the greatest. So, I think he's put himself right in that category with these other big 3-year-olds that are going to be turning 4, and hopefully all of them come back really, really good, and then we've got a great division once again.
Yeah, hopefully we get them all back. That's the key, right? Because you have not seen some of those guys run. We're expecting all of them to run. Sovereignty back in training, obviously that's a positive as well. So hopefully we get all those horses back as we move a little further along. Let's just flip over to the 3-year-olds here. Paladin wins the Risen Star over Chip Honcho. This is an interesting one for me. Paladin was your favorite. Obviously is your favorite in the Kentucky Derby, both going in and out of this race with the victory. Runs a 93 Beyer, career best number for him in that spot. What do you make of Paladin's win here? Because I know both of us not high on Chip Honcho. And so you kind of take a look at this in the first blush and say, well, that was Chip Honcho. We should have beaten him by more. But it was first off a layoff. There's other reasons why we'd expect this horse to improve. What did you make of Paladin's run?
Well, look, I think if you're going to take just that race, it was average. I mean, as far as can we win the Kentucky Derby, right? It was just average. It wasn't going to absolutely blow you away. And anytime you win a 50-point prep race, it's good. So you have that. Here's the thing about Chip Honcho, and I still don't really like him. He got the perfect trip on the track that was playing perfect for the trip that he got, right? Speed was playing so well, inside speed specifically. He went out, he got the lead. He was ahead by, a length or 2 down the backside, and then Paladin was able to come get him. So that is positive. The other positive is nobody else was even close to these 2 horses. Golden Tempo closed, but he was way back. And for third, here's the deal. We've seen this now with Zandon, and we saw it with Sierra Leone. The Risen Star is just the first race for these Chad Brown runners. They run a lot better in the Bluegrass. So that's the key. Will Paladin improve in the Bluegrass? That's where he's going next. And if you see that next jump, then yeah, he's right there and he's going to be one of these contenders. I think in a year that was not kind of light like it is right now as far as Kentucky Derby contenders, you might look at Paladin's race and go, he's got too far to come. But I think he's kind of right there with everybody after that win.
Yeah, I think he's a deserving favorite right now, based on the body of work we saw. We saw Renegade come back, run very well, the horse that Paladin's faced in the 2 races prior to this and during that 2-year-old season. Now you have Paladin come back, and to your point, the Chip Honcho got everything his own way in this race, and Paladin was able to run him down. I thought that took some heart, took some guts, which is something that you need from horses when you're looking forward toward the Triple Crown and specifically the Kentucky Derby, when you have 19 other horses out there on the track and things are not going to go your way. It's not going to be a perfect trip. So to me, that was the biggest positive here. And to your point, we knew this was not the target for Chad Brown. We always talk about target races and trainers training up to a specific target. This was the comeback attempt. And I thought for a comeback attempt, this was pretty good. I was surprised people were a little negative on this effort from Paladin because it's the first race since the Remsen. He's going to run once more before the Derby. This is the normal track that Chad Brown takes with his Derby horses. So it's a situation where a little surprised people were down on Paladin coming out of this, especially considering he was the Derby favorite, but he didn't blow away the field. I think people expected him to win by 3-4 lengths. And I'm just not sure that based on the way the race was run, that was even possible.
No, it was never going to happen to begin with. And we talked about it. It's like, you're not going to see his A race. And there are certain trainers, let's just throw like a Chad Brown, a Bill Mott. There are others.
Pletcher.
They're target trainers, like you just said. And you think about Sovereignty. We didn't see his best until the Derby because that was the goal, right? And then there are trainers like, let's just throw out Todd Pletcher, Bob Baffert, Brad Cox. It's just like, hey, every time they hit the track, we're running our best race today. They don't really. They say, yeah, we're working backwards towards something, but it's not a natural build. It's just like, yeah, this is the race, and we'll space out races like this to get there, but we're still trying to run our best race every single time, and so it's a different philosophy. So, yeah, I think some people, like, let's say Bob Baffert trained Paladin, he may have won by 8 on that day, right? Because, hey, we're running our giant race every time. That's just not how Chad Brown does it. It's not how Bill Mott does it, and so that's just kind of, you got to realize that. The Risen Star in February, you're not going to see that horse blow out and have some kind of crazy performance. And like you said, the track bias was pretty bad on the dirt that day, and he was able to overcome that.
Yeah, you look at I'm not going to call Chad Brown a small barn, but when you look at a Kentucky Derby contender barn, he is not a major barn, right? It's not like the 8 Brad Cox horses that we talk about over the term. It's not the 10 Bob Bafferts that all could pop at different times. And so they train their horses differently than someone like Mott, who has usually 1, maybe 2 a year. Brown, who has 1, maybe 2 a year, that he is pointing toward the Kentucky Derby. Because of that, you get this build for them where they're really focused on one horse getting better and better and better and then popping that A+ effort on the first Saturday in May. You mentioned Golden Tempo real quick in that 3rd spot. What did you make of the race? Because I thought he was the one who kind of took the worst of it from a track bias scenario, never really had a chance to win this race. I thought ran okay, not great. What did you make of Golden Tempo's effort here?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. But here's the problem with Golden Tempo. Most races, when it's over, that's what you're going to say about him. Because dirt racing in the United States, usually you need to be towards the front. I'm not saying you need to be in the front, but you need to be towards the front. If you're going to talk about track bias, it's usually because it's fast. That usually happens on all the big days. We sit here and talk about stuff like that. We saw this with Sierra Leone, and I don't think Golden Tempo is nearly as good as Sierra Leone at this point, but it's like he just couldn't string together wins coming from way out of it. There's coming from last, Mike, and then there's coming from 20 links out of it. And that's, I mean, he wasn't that far behind, but at some points, Golden Tempo wasn't on the screen. It's just super, super hard to win dirt races in the United States when you're doing that. And I have nothing against him. I think he's a decent horse, but it's going to be very hard to bet him unless you handicap a race and you go, holy hell, there's so much pace in here, it's going to set up for him. And even if there was no bias on that day, that race did not set up for him. And the majority of them are not. Now, for the Derby, yeah, we've been getting paces, so maybe he gets a better setup. Maybe there are spots where you can play him, but He's just going to be a hard horse to trust. I don't know if you noticed, but right out of the gate, Ortiz asked that horse, and he wanted no part of it.
Yeah.
To their credit, they know exactly what we're talking about. They tried to get him in a good spot. He didn't want to run early. There's not much you can do at that point.
Yeah, Jose Ortiz was on interviews prior to the race, and he specifically said, I'm going to try and get him more forward in this spot. And yet you look at, any point up to 6 furlongs, Colt 47 was last. He was 102-1. Golden Tempo was last by 6 lengths from the sixth-place competitor at the 6 furlong point. And you just cannot be that far back in this style of a race. Now, to your point, I do think there's some relevance in the Derby where you're going to have a faster pace. I don't think distance is an issue with Golden Tempo, and so maybe this is a horse that you're looking at in that 3rd spot, in the 4th spot, who's able to pass a lot of horses who are tiring down the stretch. Obviously trip dependent. You're going to need to get good breaks and be able to weave through the field, but I do think that is at least something you got to keep an eye on from Golden Tempo here. Anyone else from this race you want to discuss, or is it really Paladin, Golden Tempo, and then kind of the rest in your mind?
Yeah, that's how I look at it. I mean, Chip Honcho is going to be in the Derby now. I don't know what that really means. I still don't really like him that well, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be there, but I just don't have a lot of interest in him. But to be fair, I haven't had a lot of interest in him the last 2 races. He didn't run poorly in either one of them, obviously. So I guess just keep an eye on him. I'm sure he'll go Louisiana Derby, and we'll talk about him again.
He'll matter from a pace perspective, right? At least that's just at least one horse we know that is going to be in the Derby that is going to be forward early and kind of pushing that tempo. So we'll see how much that matters. I agree with you. I'm not long-term Chip Honcho, not one that I'm overly interested in. Long-term, Pavlovian, not one I'm overly interested in, as he's able to get the win there in the Sunland Derby. I did not think I won this photo. I had Pavlovian. You had Express Train. I watched this in real time. I thought that you won the photo here and that I was going to be frustrated because the better price ends up running second. But somehow Pavlovian gets the nose down, gets the win there at Sunland Derby. It's worth some points. Anything else you want to take from that? Because there's not much from my mind.
Nothing for the Derby that I'll take out of that race at all. I will say this, though. That race is why horse racing is so fun or can be frustrating depending on how it works out, because you sat here and you made a great case for Pavlovian last week, but your case was there's so much speed. Yeah. He's the only closer. They'll tire out and he'll be way back and then he'll come get him. He breaks and he presses Express Kid every step of the way. This horse has never shown any speed and he's out there on the front. And he hangs on and wins. And that's a great thing about it sometimes. It's like once the gates open, you kind of just pray from that point that it works out for you. And I'm sure you're sitting there watching the race going, I can't believe how this is unfolding. He's going to fold. He just kept going, Mike. And so it was a good pick for you. One of the worst race calls maybe in the history of horse racing. The track announcer called Express Kid a winner 37 times, and then they show the photo. He's like, I guess he didn't win. So anyway, it was funny. But no, for the Derby, no.
Yeah, one of those times where you know who the announcer bet. Every now and then you know which announcers bet at races, and you know who they bet. And that was one of those. I'm like, oh, all right, we had Express Kid in this spot, huh?
The photo was way tight. And I was with you, watching live, I thought, maybe, but I'm not sure. There's no way you should call that as a caller. You just say photo, and then he called it confidently and several times for the wrong horse. So interesting.
Whoops. What can you do? And honestly, Turf Paradise, one of the tougher, as is Turfway Park, 2 of the tougher places to call photos in my mind, because you're not even on the line. It's kind of a weird angle, and so it's a lot more difficult than places like Gulfstream Park or Santa Anita, which I find pretty easy to call photos. That's one of those places I probably would not be overly confident in calling a photo there, and that one came back to bite him as Pavlovian able to get the win there in the Sunland Derby. Good job, Pavlovian. Not really relevant for the rest of this Kentucky Derby cycle here. We mentioned earlier, Sovereignty is back on the work tab. It looks like we're going to say late spring, early summer for the first time that we see Sovereignty on the track. I'm just happy that we're seeing him back on the work tab and that he is going to be back on the track this year, because it was getting a little bleak there for a minute.
Yeah, it sounds like everything went well. Bill Mott said he's either looking at the Oaklawn Handicap, which is the week before the Kentucky Derby, or the Ali Sheba, which is Kentucky Derby weekend. I believe that is Oaks Day when they run the Ali Sheba. If I had a guess, I would say it's one of those two, and then probably the Stephen Foster, and then looking at the Whitney, probably the Jockey Club, because they moved that race to kind of fit to be more of a Kentucky or more of a Breeders' Cup Prep and then the Breeders' Cup Classic. That's probably what you're looking at if all things go well. But I'm with you. It's just good to see him back.
I would be surprised if it's not the Ali Sheba. I'd say it's like 80-20. He loves Churchill Downs. Why would you not run at Churchill Downs? Why would you go to Oaklawn versus running somewhere that obviously he has had a lot of success in the street sense, as well as the Kentucky Derby there. Before we get into everything else, I do want to make sure I mention this. We're going to talk about trip handicapping later, and it's going to be something we're going to discuss throughout this show as well. So stick around after we do the previews, before the best bets. We'll talk a little bit about trips and what exactly we mean and how we focus on trip handicapping when we're looking through it. But before we get into those previews, make sure if you are not a VSiN Pro that you check out the VSiN Pro subscriptions process right now. You can get your edge in horse racing markets and across all sports for just $9.99 for your first month, as well as our MLB betting guide, which is just released over there at VSiN.com. So head over to VSiN.com/subscribe and check out all of the subscription options that are available, including $9.99 for your very first month. Getting close to March Madness as well. It's a time that I enjoy having that VSiN subscription because a lot of work goes into that March Madness guide as well, which is coming out there later next month. All right, let's jump into the previews for this week, and we'll start out with the ladies over at Turfway Park here. Race number 9 on Friday, the Cincinnati Trophy Stakes. We've got 11 horses who are heading postward in what I feel is a pretty wide open race here in this spot. We're going to go 1 mile on the all-weather synthetic track, $175,000 up for grabs. Your morning line favorite here, Dame Laura, 2-1, Brendan Walsh, and Morales aboard. Where are you going on top here, Aaron?
Well, I'm going to go number 8, Dame Laura, on top in this spot. Look, I think this horse showed 3 decent efforts on the turf to start the career here. You know, broke the maiden at Horseshoe Indianapolis very impressively. A couple of nice allowance races. Didn't win, got second, got beat by Sister Terrain in the second start. That's a really nice horse that we've talked about on this show a couple of weeks ago. Third in the next start at Churchill. Came over here to Turfway Park to make the synthetic debut. Wow, I thought this was the best surface for this horse after watching this race. An easy win by 5 3/4 lengths. Just a really, really solid win right here at the 1 mile distance as well. So I'm going to go right back to her. Brendan Walsh having a really good year here so far. Always does well here at Turfway. So it's a Godolphin filly. I think she's got a pretty good future. I'm not sure if she's going to be like a dirt horse or anything like that. But I think turf synthetic, I think Dame Laura is pretty good. So give me number 8, Dame Laura, on top.
Yeah, it's always interesting handicapping these races, which set up for the Oaks and for the Derby on a surface that is more turfy than it is dirt. And so you have to kind of look into the turf pedigrees and look on that side and see what horses you think are going to be able to really excel. Now, for this race specifically, almost every one of these horses is run on synthetic, so it makes it a lot easier from a handicapping process because it feels like there's a lot of less guessing. And every horse has at least run on turf. So you have some idea of how they're going to be able to handle this surface. I respect Dame Laura. I think Dame Laura should be the favorite. I'm going to go for a little bit of a price, and this actually is one of the trip handicaps for me here. I'm going to go to the number 2, Lovely Gray, for Kelsey Danner. This is one of 2 horses that he's got in this race. Also has the 10 Map of the Moon, who I was interested in. And Map of the Moon 3-1 here. Lovely Gray 10-1 on the morning line on the 2. And this is one of those spots where you go back and you kind of look at some of the turf races last year. And I like the win at Colonial where we broke the maiden, went to Kentucky Downs. That's a pretty tough race, especially breaking from the rail. Comes back in the Salina and really didn't get the trip that you want. Comes back at Turfway Park in an N1X allowance, ends up running third to Resist, who's in this race. You go back and you watch that. That was a really, really tough race for Lovely Gray. So it mentions in the trip notes clips heels, which is true. Like the horse almost goes down to a nose, though, and that's not really mentioned. So 2 horses from that race, clipped heels, who were back in this one. Lovely Gray, in my mind, clearly got the worst of it as she almost went down. And then she had more trip trouble on the backstretch where she was kind of stuck in between horses. And there was a horse that backed up into the 3 of them. And so Lovely Gray had to then stall the move and then was forced inside on the stretch. All things that are not great for a horse that is trying to come from off the pace. With all of that added up in a race that I feel like is pretty wide open, I'm going to take a little bit of a shot here. Second off the layoff for a trainer that has 2, including one of the favorites. I'm going to go with the number 2, Lovely Gray, at 10-1 to pull the upset here.
Look, I like the pick. I have Lovely Gray in third, and I have Resist in second. And Resist, the horse you just talked about that won that allowance race, both 10-1s. So, favorite over a couple of 10-1s and exacta if you wanted to do that. 8 over 211, I don't think would be a bad bet. I saw a lot of what you saw. I went back and watched that race. I think Resist, the 11, just another one that probably didn't have the trouble, but, wasn't just the ideal trip, I don't think, last time out, and was able to get the job done. But you're right. The more you watch Lovely Gray, the fact that she made any kind of run tells me she's a racehorse, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was a good effort. I mean, a lot of horses when they go through that kind of I'll just say trauma, because for a young horse, that's kind of what it is for them. They may start running, or they may just say, I think I've had enough of this today, and kind of just run in place. So I'm with you. I like the 2 in third. I do have the 11, like I said, in second. I thought that was a pretty good allowance race, so I wanted to use them both and get them involved. And I do think it's interesting. You mentioned, Danner has 2 horses. I didn't really like the 10 Map of the Moon, who is 3-1 on the morning line. I didn't see it for that horse.
I understand why the horse is 3-1. Map of the Moon's undefeated, 3 for 3. So she's never done anything wrong in her career. Won at Keeneland, breaking her maiden. That's not easy to do. It was turf sprinting. Goes to Aqueduct, wins a stakes race. Turf sprinting, not easy to do. Then comes to Turfway Park, tries a synthetic for the first time, wins turf sprinting as well. My main concern here is we're bred to handle the mile distance, but I'm not sure I want to take 3-1 in a race that I feel like is wide open for a horse that is trying something new here, going 2 turns, especially breaking from the 10 post in what I kind of consider to be a murky pace. It's pretty clear that the 1 and the 3 are going to go. Outside of that, you've got a lot of horses that are stretching out from sprint distances that haven't shown a ton of speed, but are going to be faster just because of the distance today. And that's where, I don't know if Map of the Moon is going to be able to tuck in the rail in third, or if Map of the Moon is going to be 3-4 wide on that first turn and just lose ground. And you mentioned Resist. The trip wasn't perfect because we were wide on the first turn, wide on the second turn, but had no trouble, just kind of had to cover a little bit more ground than everyone else in that field, versus Lovely Gray and Rip Current, who were the 2 that clipped heels, who had that trouble early. Again, I think Lovely Gray got the worst of it and did run on for third and fourth in that spot. So I find Map of the Moon to be one of those horses where 100% could win the race, just not one that I'm going to bet at the price that we're currently getting offered here. I think 3-1, just a little bit too short there. Rip Current, who was the other one who clipped heels for Paulo Lobo there, broke the maiden at Turfway in a maiden claimer for $50,000, won pretty easily in that spot, came back, ran fourth in the last. You're using Resist, you're using Lovely Gray. Any interest in Rip Current, or did you kind of see what I saw where I didn't have that much of an excuse on Rip Current's side, where I do think Lovely Gray had a big excuse and still able to beat her?
Same. Yeah, I thought the same thing. I don't mind Rip Current. If you want to take a shot with Rip Current, I wouldn't necessarily talk you off the horse. Bred really, really well. Pretty good connections. I'm the same way. I just didn't see an excuse really in that race. It kind of felt like to me, Mike, Rip Current should have won that race, and just couldn't get the job done. So I took a pass there. You talked about the pace. I think I'm 100% with you. I think it's really kind of a 50-50 situation. I do think there are the number 1, the number 3. I do think number 10, Map the Moon, I think that horse will need to go. So it could kind of create a little bit of a pace, but all it's going to take is maybe the 1 doesn't break very well on the rail and get shuffled back or something. I think the 3 is the main danger. I don't think the horse has to have the lead, but I think could get it. But she's shown in the last 2 races she can sit just off of it as well. I think if you're looking for a horse towards the front, I think the 3 Coco Connect is the one to use.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd much rather have the 3 than the 1. It has been able to come from off the pace, going 6.5 the last 2 times. The big issue here, the one time we went a mile and a 16th, now in the Goldenrod, which we're 87-1, but clearly just not that level, but didn't handle the distance at all. And so that's going to be the big question mark. It's class versus distance, right? Was that a class issue or is that a distance issue there in the Goldenrod? I do think the 7 Emily's Joy is going to go too, and not a relevant horse at all from a win perspective. 30-1 on the morning line, coming out of claiming races, but has shown 22 and change, 23 and change speed. And if that's the case, I think Emily's Joy could also make life a little more difficult for some of those early horses there. So number 2, Lovely Gray for me. Number 8, Dame Laura for Aaron. Anyone else we didn't mention here that you want to talk about?
I think we got it pretty much covered. We talked about almost all of them that I think are relevant. So no, I think I'm good.
All right, I'm going to try and – I went 4 for 4 last week in the race, the highlight races. So we're trying to go 5 for 5 here, keep extending the streak. We'll see if Lovely Gray 10-1 can get home for me. Again, number 8, Dame Laura for Aaron here, 2-1 on the morning line. All right, let's fast forward to Saturday's racing from Gulfstream Park. We got the Gulfstream Park Sprint, race number 10 on the card, 6 furlongs over the dirt. And one of my favorites, Damon's Mound, comes back in this spot, going to be the favorite. I don't know, man. I'm interested in your take on this one. I'll talk about buyer figures here and why I'm a little lower on Damon's Mound, especially as the favorite in this spot. But where are you going on top?
Oh, I thought you would definitely go Damon's Mound. I'm pretty confident in him in this spot. If you want to talk about buyers, I've got time for him as well. We could kind of compare him and see how that goes and see what we think. But look, I think it's a great spot for him. You are a huge fan of this horse, and I think for good reason. You tried to play him into Vanderbilt. It didn't work out that day. But look, when he's gotten back into the kind of the class that really fits him, I think he's been awfully good. The Bold Ruler, 2 races back at Belmont at the Big A. I think that race is just as good as what he's going to face here. He was able to get the job done. Florida bred race last time out to get him ready for this one. I mean, he won like he should have. No big deal there. But look, I think he's really tough in this spot. I think he's going to get the lead. I think he takes him gate to wire. So I do really like the number 6 Damon's Mound in this spot.
Oh, look, he's found his friends here. I think that's the best way to put it. This is the level that he should be at. I did like him in the Vanderbilt there, but I was getting 17-1, right? And that's a little bit different than what I expect to be sub-even money here in this spot. The problem for me, and this is something that you see a lot, is that I do use buyers mainly. You're obviously more of a time form guy. The 97 buyer in the Vanderbilt where you run 4th, a lot of times you're going to get inflated buyers in stakes races that horses don't win because of who else is in the race in the final time. And especially on big days where you mentioned it earlier, these tracks are tuned up a little bit more. You're going to see better times on those specific days because the track is a little bit tighter. And I feels like that one race, which is an outlier when you look at the rest of his numbers, nothing else over a 93 for him. And that was also in a loss. I just don't know if we should be sub-even money if we're looking at those type of numbers where it's like, hey, a lot of these horses can run low 90s. And if that's what Damon's Mound is running, I would almost rather take a shot on a different horse here. And I'm going to do that with what I'm hoping is a price. No morning lines out for this race yet. But I'm going to go to the outside here in Con Campagna for Robert Diodona. This is going to be the second time that Diodona has had this horse. Miguel Vasquez is going to jump aboard here for the first time. Was trained by Amador Sanchez. And a lot of times when we see these horses come from Chile, we see Amador Sanchez take over. And this is a horse that was mainly sprinting over in Chile. And I think that's important to note because that Harlan's Holiday, the first race in the Diabona barn, was 1 1/16. And this horse was forwardly placed going 110-4. That's going to be very, very tough for a horse that I think is a better sprinter. You go back and you look at some of these 6 furlong races, 6.5, 7 furlong races at Gulfstream Park. This horse kind of fits. And I do feel like this is one of those where you're going to see quite a bit of speed, and breaking from the outside may actually be an advantage here because I don't think Con Campagna needs to go to the lead. I think this is a horse that can kind of sit second or third and then get first run and a clear trip on the outside at a much better price than a lot of the other horses are going to be offering in here. So I'm going to go to the outside here and take Con Campagna here at hopefully, I'm hoping like 8-1, somewhere in that range. We'll see what the price ends up being here, but I'm going to take a little bit of a shot here in the Gulfstream Park Sprint.
I've got that one in second, and I think you make a good case, and I'm with you. I think this is going to be a great distance, to get back to for this horse. The first race, I draw a line through it. I don't really know were they just trying to get to the Pegasus maybe off of that?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were hoping that Con Campagna gets the lead, but they went 22-4, 45-4, and this horse was chasing the whole time. I like the fact that you made the middle move at the 6 furlong point. Mm-hmm. But I don't understand how that was ever going to be successful unless you got loose, and then they didn't get loose, and that was kind of it in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. You go back and rewatch that, and you go, "Hey, there's a Pegasus winner, Skippy Longstocking. Who would have known?" But yeah, it was it definitely just was. When you look at the other races this horse have had, just throw that out. I don't know what that was. So then listen, you mentioned this is a good trainer. We're going to get back to what we're doing here. So look, I'm with you. I think this horse has a big shot. I put him in second. I don't know. Like I'm really confident in Damon's Mount. I really think these are the only two you need out of here. I did kind of look for a while. Ultimately didn't go that way. Ronaldo, the 7 horse, or Rolando, I should say. I thought last time out wasn't too bad. Got 4th, got beat by Concrete Glory. That's not a bad horse. Ran in the Steel Valley Sprint 2 back. Fastest gator. That's ran pretty well that day to get 4th to that horse. I think there's something there if you want a little bit of a price, but you're going to need, I think, like 12 to 1 on this one.
Yeah, you'd need a pretty big price to make me interested here in Rolando. I do like that John Velasquez jumps aboard. He's one of those jockeys that seems to be scoring at Gulfstream Park at prices and races where you don't really expect the horse to be able to get the job done. So I do think that is at least a positive. Also, second off the layoff, which should be a good thing. Has had success over this track. It's run 6 times. 5 of the 6 been in the money. 3 of the 6, all 6 has been in the money. 3 of the 6 have become wins. I looked at Beeline a little bit here, but I feel like it might be a little bit too big of a step up here. But I do respect Riley Mott, especially in stakes races. He's got a positive ROI in that spot. And I looked at the inside, Great Navigator, for a little bit as well. I think Great Navigator probably needs this to fall apart to be really competitive. But I wouldn't be shocked if this is one of those races where if Damon's Mound, let's say that Damon's Mound goes, and let's say that Campagna goes, and let's say that Rolando goes, all of a sudden it is setting up for someone to try and come from off the pace. If this was 7, I'd be even more interested in this collapsing, but 6 at Gulfstream doesn't collapse as much as you would need it to be able to go to one of the dead closers.
Yeah, I think that is the other problem. I think our 2 horses, the 6 and the 8, they kind of control things the way I look at it up front. And if that's the case, I mean, these are 2 guys that they're not going to burn each other out, right? Especially like if the 8 goes crazy, well, Alvarado's not going to go challenge. He'll just sit behind, and probably vice versa. So, yeah, I'm with you. It makes it hard for a closer to envision a closer really having a great setup. And that's, I think, why I kept just going back to it's like, I think it's Damon's Mound or the 8 Con Campagna, and that's it. I just don't – I mean, Wound Up, I think the 5, that's a horse that might be able to sit a little bit better of a trip, and it gets IRAD. So maybe, this is a horse that can sit in 3rd and draft behind him. But the horse really hasn't done a whole lot of running lately, I feel like. So that's kind of my worry there.
Yeah, and all the Santa Anita wins were gate to wire. And it's like, well, I don't think you're getting the lead. And if Wound Up does go nuts and gets the lead, it feels like it sets up well for the 8 or the 6. And so it's just hard for me to get to Wound Up, although I wouldn't be shocked if that horse runs 3rd. But one of those spots where it's just hard for me to try and put the 5 Wound Up on top. Again, if Damon's Mound is like 2 to 1, then I'm going to the 6 here. But I don't think that we're ever getting 2 to 1 on Damon's Mount. I think this is a situation where it's closer to 4 to 5. So Aaron goes with number 6, Damon's Mount in this spot. I'm going to go with the number 8, Con Campagna here in the Gulfstream Park Sprint, race number 10 on Saturday's Gulfstream Park card. Now, everybody's watching us here. Appreciate you checking out that new YouTube channel at VSiN at the Track. Everyone who's listening in podcast form, be it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, make sure you check it out. We're live on YouTube at VSiN at the Track. You can catch all the full episodes as well as clips throughout the week. So make sure to head over to YouTube and at VSiN at the Track and subscribe to never miss one of our best moments. Join the VSiN at the Track community and make sure you post your comments and questions below. We're actually going to address one of those when we get to the section a little bit later on the racing lingo. All right, Aaron, let's move forward to what I'll call the race of the weekend here. We're going to go back to Turfway Park here. Race number 9 on Saturday's card, a mile and 16th over synthetic. The John Battaglia Memorial, $175,000 on the line, and the prep here at Turfway for the Jeff Ruby Stakes, one of the major Kentucky Derby preps. Really interesting race here. Number 1, Street Beast, is going to be your favorite, 5-2 on the morning line. Looked very good winning over this turf or synthetic course last time out after running 4th in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf over at Del Mar. But I'm not going with the 1. I actually had 3 horses here that I liked more than the 1. And I thought this was a wildly competitive race. We've got 12 heading posts. We do have a 13th also eligible horse, so I think it's a little bit interesting if draws in. Where are you going on top here in this spot?
It's hilarious because I have 3 horses that I wanted to talk about as well, and none of them are the 1 Street Beast. I'll just start. I'm going to try to beat Street Beast here. I think the pace is going to be very fast, and I think that's going to be a problem for him. And I don't know, like the extra 16th of a mile with a faster pace, I just don't want to play a short price in this one. So I was between three horses: number 7, Atfield; number 9, Stop the Car; and number 11, Full Effort. Those are the three that I like here in this spot. I ended up going number 11, Full Effort, on top just because I just think this pace is really going to speed up, and I think it's going to benefit him quite a bit. He closed very nicely last time out in the race that Street Beast won in the local prep race for this one, talking about the 11 Full Effort. It just that day, it's like, man, he's making up a lot of ground. Even if it was just an extra 16th of a mile, I think he would have got there even without a faster pace. So I ended up going with him. I do think, though, the number 7 Atfield is just really fascinating to me. That's who I put in second. Broke the maiden sprinting at Saratoga on debut. That is not easy to do. Beat Schwarzenegger that day, a very heavily hyped horse. Schwarzenegger really stopped after going fast, but still,
Yeah.
I mean, he did, but look, he was the only one to catch him. So give him credit. Third in a sprint next, and then stretched out to a mile and 16th and 1 last time out. I just worry it's a long time. November 7th is the last time we saw this horse. So I was a little bit worried about that. I also have some mild interest in the number 9, Stop the Car. His first 2 races were really good on the dirt. His race last time out in LeCompte was just terrible. Will the surface change maybe help him a little bit? Will just a little bit easier of a race help him a little bit? So I'm 11, 7, 9, and it is very close between those three. I'm on what order I've got them in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we each have 3 horses we want to talk about. Only one of your horses is on my list. And
Nice.
We're not talking about the favorite yet, which tells you just how wide open this race is. So for me, the 7 Atfield is one that I'm interested in. I went back and forth, and I do think that it's a horse that can be closer to the pace and still be very effective. So I do think the 7 Atfield has a shot here. The 12 Two-Out Hero, who's going to be first off the layoff here for Kevin Attard, a trainer who's usually up in Woodbine, was in the summer, the Grade 1 summer, last time out, late last season. And that was after breaking the maiden on synthetic, winning by 12 lengths, jumps up to a stakes race, wins on the turf, stretches out to a mile, ends up running a very good third in that race. I do think Two Out Here is a little interesting, but I'm going to go with the biggest price of the 3 that I'm interested in. I'm going to go to the other Brad Cox horse. Give me the number 4, Kilo Tango here, 12-1 on the morning line. This is one of those horses I think is really interesting because Brad Cox debuts at Keeneland trying to get on the turf. That race gets rained off the turf. Irad Ortiz rides. Ends up not running very well in the 10 out of 10 post. Comes back on the Churchill Downs turf. Stays on the turf there. I think runs a really sneaky good race. Broke from the 7th gate, lost ground on both turns, was 3 wide on the first turn, 4 wide on the second turn. Ends up running third to a horse named No Joke Joe, who came back to win next time out and has been a very usable, very good horse at the stakes level, exiting out of that race. And then comes to Turfway Park and breaks the maiden in what I thought was a very good closing effort, runs a career best buyer. This horse is bred for the synthetic, has a very high Tomlinson score in the synthetic of a 393. And now you get De La Cruz in the saddle here. 81 runs for Brad Cox, has won 38% of those over the last 2 years, is 4 for 8 at Turfway Park. You mentioned the pace. I think it's going to be hot. I think it sets up for a horse coming from off it. I'll go with the other Brad Cox in here, the 4 Kilo Tango at 12-1.
Yeah, it is interesting that we're trying to go against a favorite. We only have one overlapping. We like 3 horses. Man, Kilo Tango, I looked at this horse forever, and I just don't know that he's going to be fast enough. That's what I worry about. But you know what? I said the exact same thing about Pavlovian last week, and lo and behold. So look for Kilo Tango to go gate to wire, right, Sam?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's going to happen. Well, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting you say fast enough because, and I'm not a big time guy, but I want to make sure I put that out there right away because the track variance can be so different from day to day. But Kilo Tango won at a mile over that Turfway Park track in 1 minute and 40 seconds, 140 and 2/5. Street Beast won over a mile in 1 minute, 40 seconds and 2/5. Same time as the favorite, right? And so, I mean, if you tell me someone's going to improve, I could see Kilo Tango taking a big-time step forward here. 4th race of the career. His horse cost a pretty penny, $575,000 at auction. And I like the fact that Irad thought it was worth riding this horse the first 2 races. That tells you something because Cox and Irad usually team up with Cox's better horses, and then you get Machado, who does jump off here, which is, I guess, one of the things you would be a little bit concerned about. but he's not landing anywhere else in here. So to me, it's one of those situations where we're getting one of the riders that is regularly up for this barn. So I'm not overly concerned about the jock switch here. And De La Cruz is 17% at the track. Like, he knows how to ride this racetrack as well. So yeah, probably needs to get a little faster. But to me, is one of the horses that I think could really improve in this spot.
Has a right to improve for sure. And look, we were talking about dirt races and how hard it is to close in a dirt race. Well, this is not a dirt race. It's synthetic. In synthetic and turf, closers become more dangerous, right? It's still not like the easiest thing in the world to come from way out of it, but you got a much better chance to do it. So you don't mind taking those quite as much, which is why I took full effort. And look, Kilo Tango and Full Effort, the two Brad Cox horses, they're probably going to be side by side in this race, about 12 lengths out of it, right? So hopefully we're both getting the pace, and then we can root for either one of them to get home there. So you mentioned that the horse on the also eligible list. I wanted to talk about that one just real quick. This is kind of another one you could say, hey, we could take a step up here, because debuted, ran 6 furlongs, won the race by a length and a quarter. It was only, like I said, a 6 furlong race, but I thought he looked pretty sharp doing it. I don't know about the stretch out, but pedigree-wise, on the bottom at least, it feels like we're going to be able to get this distance. I thought the 13 Small Town made a lot of sense here. I don't know. We talk about trips a lot. We're going to talk about them later as well. I don't know what kind of trip we can work out from the 13 hole, but I think the horse is dangerous if he gets in.
Yeah, interesting thing. Michael McCarthy, a trainer I think we both respect quite a bit, able to kind of place horses well, was 0 for 24 on synthetic prior to that race. Now 1 for 25. So it doesn't put a lot of horses on synthetic and doesn't usually have success, yet had a debut winner there. That tells you that this was really a horse that he felt this was the best surface for. And the fact that we're jumping up into this race second out, I think says a lot about what Michael McCarthy believes in small towns. So I think the 13 is interesting if the 13 draws in. I'm a little surprised. We'll talk about the 1 and the 11 in a second here, but I'm a little surprised you didn't like the 12 2-out hero. I thought this was one of those that you might gravitate toward, especially because of that grade 1 summer effort last time out. Argos wins that race. I think we both believe that's a good horse, as well as Wild Desert, who ran second there. What was your reasoning to not use the 12 2-out hero?
Hadn't seen him since September 13th, so I was a little bit worried about that. I don't trust only Woodbine runners until I see him run outside of Woodbine once. And that's where it was for me. I think the summer specifically was a very good race, but I just worry. I also worry about the trip for this horse. All the way out the 12 hole, has speed. Are we going to try to take him gate to wire? Are we going to sit off and maybe be 4 or 5 wide? Because there's a lot of horses I think are going to go towards the front. So a little bit worried about the pace or about the trip. But most importantly, I just don't trust the Woodbine horses until they make that first start outside of Woodbine, and then we can go from there.
It's fair. I mean, I usually want a better price if I'm taking the Woodbine-only horses when they're at Saratoga or they're coming to Turfway or at Gulfstream. I want doubles. I want 10-1 plus versus 3-1. One of the reasons why 2-out hero didn't end up on the top of my ticket here. All right, let's talk about the number 1 Street Beast and the number 11 Full Effort. You mentioned you like the 11 a little more than the 1. It's a Brad Cox horse that ran very well on the turf, then tried the synthetic for the first time. I thought ran well, but was kind of just up against it, considering the pace setup that Street Beast was able to get in that 8-horse field. I think we both agree the pace is going to be faster, and that's one of the reasons we're against Street Beast here in this spot. You like the 11 of the 2. Was it simply just the pace setup here, as you mentioned, or is this a horse that you think has an opportunity to really take a step forward second off the layoff?
Well, the pace is the biggest thing for me and why I like the 11 Full Effort. I just kind of feel like when you go back and watch the last race, that was a pretty good effort for a horse that was chasing basically no speed whatsoever, was able to close and almost get the job done. And I just think with different dynamics, the horse wins. Look, with Street Beast, I like this horse, but I just don't think it sets up very well for him. On the rail, going to get pressed every step of the way, got to go a little bit longer. I will tell you this, if Street Beast wins here, I think he is really going to be a pretty good horse on the turf later on in the season, right? I just don't think this is a Derby horse no matter what, because you don't have breeding that really says it. And if he was a dirt horse, they'd try it, well before now, and they still aren't trying it. So I think the Street Beast is he ran really well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf as well. But I just think the dynamics are going to be really tough for him in this spot. So that's why I'm kind of against him. If he wins, proves me wrong, definitely a horse I think is going to be useful down the road. But if he wins here, it's going to be a pretty good effort in my opinion.
Yeah, Street Beast, one of those horses where just don't do the Derby. If he wins this, if he wins the Jeff Ruby Stakes, don't do it. We've seen it before. It takes a long time for those horses to refigure themselves out after that dirt run, and this is to me a horse that should be on turf. So we'll see what Street Beast does on a Saturday. I do want to mention one more because I looked at the number 2 Steel Imperium for a long time. Horse is 15-1 on the morning line. Broke the maiden impressively, going 6 furlongs over this racetrack. Probably wants a lot more distance than that. Arch on the bottom, Essential Quality on the top. The horse sold for $510,000 off a $25,000 stud fee. That's a good sign. Was able to close a ton of ground. Broke from the inside as a first-time starter and did it, which is not an easy thing to do. I am a little interested in the 2 Steel Imperium, and I will be pretty pissed at myself if this horse wins, and I didn't at least mention it here because this is one I am going to be using in the multis.
Yeah, I hear you. I thought about this one for a while too. It's just the unknown. We don't really know, but like you said, man, really should go much, much better once we stretch out. And anytime a horse with that pedigree wins on debut going short, you do start to think, man, when we see this horse at a mile 16th, mile and an eighth, what are we going to see? I ultimately couldn't do it either. But wheel him back quick, too. 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Which is kind of, it's kind of a sign. It's like, we like him. Let's try to get him in there, and let's see what happens. So, I'm not going to use, but, if he wins, hopefully you're alive and you used him, and it's all good.
Yeah, it's one of those you're going to get the price on as well. Number 4, Kilo Tango for me in the Jeff Battaglia Memorial here from Turfway Park. Race number 9 on Saturday. It's 11 for you officially, right?
Yep, number 11. Yep.
Number 11, Full Effort for Aaron, 3-1 on the morning line there. 2 Brad Cox horses, and what is an absolutely wide open race. This one, you could literally make case for 9 of these horses in my mind in this full field. And keep an eye on the number 13, Small Town, if draws in, as well as we're both a little bit interested there. All right, let's move all the way to Sunday now. Santa Anita to Pasadena, 1 mile over the turf course here in what, again, I think is another pretty wide open race. I went back and forth on this one as well. Where'd you end up on top, Aaron?
Yeah, this is a really tough race. There's no doubt about it. You got a couple of, or not a couple, but you got one Bob Baffert turf runner, which is always weird, right? Look, there's a lot of different ways you could go here. I've always been a little bit of a fan of the number 7 Brigante. I think this is a horse that's finding, I think, the right kind of running style / distance, kind of, I think going to the front and just trying to set the pace and trying to take him gate to wire is ultimately what this horse wants to do. So I'm going to go number 7 Brigante on top. Look, 3 races back, broke the maiden going gate to wire. They didn't get the lead 2 races back, and it was a mess. Last time out, got the lead, got second. I thought ran a really good race there. Just got beat. But again, you kind of look at this and go, look, I think he's starting to figure it out. I think if we get to the front here, I think we can take him gate to wire. So give me the number 7 Brigante on top.
Interesting horse there. Not my pick, but I am going to take one out of the same race.
Okay.
So that the Brigante was the Eddie Logan $100,000 mile race there. Brigante broke from the 1. I'm going to take the horse right to his inside, Unrivaled Time, who broke from the 4 post that day. They went 49 to the half, 112 to the 6 furlongs, and Unrivaled Time was in last. Brigante got to set what I think was a very tepid pace and able to run home and did everything he could to try and hold off Star Contrast, just was not able to. I think Unrivaled Time got the absolute worst of that setup. It felt like a situation where Unrivaled Time really didn't have any chance to be able to win that race because of where he was situated. He had trouble early, and that kind of forced him to be last of that 5-horse field. Never really got a chance to make a run because, look, they went really fast at the end of that race. When you go 112-1 and you finish in 135-1, when you go 49 to the half and you finish in 135-1, you went 46-1. For the second half mile. That is blazing fast. You usually see that. If you see a 46-1 half, it's usually the first half, not the second half. And to me, that meant it's set up for the horses that were around early, not the ones who wanted to come late. And honestly, like Unrivaled Time, not even a horse that's always that far off the pace. It was more of the start in that race and where he did get pinched that forced Unrivaled Time to do something different. I think we have enough pace in this race that it sets up well for Unrivaled Time to be able to sit kind of that 4th, 5th trip and be able to make a move. So I'm going to go right to the inside of Brigante. I'm going to go to the number 6 Unrivaled Time here in this spot. I'm glad you mentioned Greenwich Village, the number 2 here for Bob Baffert. I'm rarely like going to talk in complete one-directional statements, right? Like I never will, always will. I'm going to do it with Bob Baffert turf. I'm never on Bob Baffert turf horses. I just can't. They get overbet in every single situation. I understand why Greenwich Village is going to take money here. The Baffle was good. The horse won at 4.5 to 1. But if you look at Baffert's numbers, and he is a 27% at Santa Anita, 31% for the year. He's 29% sprint to route. He's 47% 2 sprints to route. He's 34% 1 last off the start, 30% in routes, 30% in stakes races. He's 18% on the turf, 12 to 13% worse than anywhere else, with a $1.02 ROI. You're losing $1 for every $2 you bet on Baffert horses on the turf. I just can't with Baffert turf horses.
Well, you make a good point. 18% is a pretty good percentage, but it's not worth they get bet at the same rate as the horses where he's 30% plus on the dirt. So it's hard, right, to do it. And I'm with you. I always try to get around Baffert on the turf as well. And look, like I said, he could win here. There's no question about it, but it's not really worth it. And I think this horse will be the favorite, honestly. We don't have odds yet, but I think this horse will be favored. So I'm with you. I'm trying to get around him. One other horse just to the inside of your horse, Later Than Planned. I'm interested to see what this horse does here. Getting back to a mile, and it was to me ran pretty well. Broke the maiden at a mile at Del Mar, and then didn't run very well at all in the Del Mar Juvenile Turf. But that was a pretty tough race. And then we sprint 3 straight times. I'm ready to see this horse get back out to a mile. So I thought this one made a lot of sense as well. The number 5 Later Than Planned. I'm kind of 7, 5, 6. That's kind of somewhere in there is where I'm at. I do like your 6 as well. I do agree with a better setup. The 6 has much better chance in this spot. So I think we both have the same idea. Try to get around Baffert and just trying to find, okay, who's going to get that trip to kind of turn it around on him this time.
Yeah, I think Unrivaled Time. I think Later Than Planned is the favorite. I do. Greenwich Village won last time out, but the mile I think makes the difference. Where and you see Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint in there, so it's a Breeders' Cup horse. Like I think that people kind of gravitate toward Later Than Planned, and I'd rather have Later Than Planned than I would Greenwich Village in this spot. One other horse I wanted to mention, Iris Urch. Iris each? I don't even know. The 8 horse in this, the 9 horse in this spot, the other D'Amato here, who also came out of the Eddie Logan, ran 4th in that race to 2 of the horses that we talked about, but had success at a mile. And that's another one where I think the pace was kind of no chance. Lost to Unrivaled Time to back in the grade 3 at Del Mar there. Any interest in the 9 horse here in this spot, the other D'Amato?
Yeah, I could see myself doing it because, how many times you see the other D'Amato win races out here like this. You can't watch that last race and get too excited, but you can watch the race 2 back that you just mentioned and go, hey, we're here with a shot, right? And I think that's what they're banking on. And even the race 3 back was pretty good right here at a mile as well at Del Mar. Look, you just throw out the last race and hopefully can kind of get back to what we were doing 2 and 3 back. Just depends on how deep I want to go. If I can go 4 deep, we don't have the odds yet, so we really don't know as far as a price perspective. But, I would not have any trouble throwing the 9 on a ticket as long as it kind of makes sense with the odds.
Yeah, I have not looked at the rest of the card. This is likely a single for me on Unrivaled Time because I just think the price isn't going to match what I would need, and it allows me to spread in other spots. And I don't really like anybody else in here. I don't really like Later Than Planned. I don't really like Brigante. I think he was moved forward by that last race. I don't really like the Baffert horse, and I do like Unrivaled Time. I think there's a real excuse in that last race. So number 6, Unrivaled Time for me. Number 7, Brigante for Aaron there. That is race number 7 on Sunday's card from Santa Anita, the Pasadena, 1 mile over The turf course. All right, Aaron, before we get to the best bets, we get comments, questions over at YouTube quite a bit on @VSiN at the track. Make sure you're subscribed over there and make sure you ask questions when you have them because we love to answer them, try and educate people as much as possible. And one of the ones that came through is, what is a trip and what makes a good trip or a bad trip, and is predicting trips actionable? So basically, we talk about trips all the time. This horse got a good trip. This horse got a bad trip. What does it mean from good and bad? And I'll kind of start out on what I look for from a bad trip. And to me, there's three things that you really highlight. The first one is ground loss. If you ever played Mario Kart, if you've ever watched a car race, you want to be on the inside, right? You don't lose ground if you're on the inside. It's the shortest path around an oval is the inside. And when you look at horse racing, specifically on the turf, specifically 2 turns, 1 turn I'm not as worried about it, but 2 turns, if you're 3 wide on the first turn, if you're 3 wide on the second turn, you have to cover a lot more ground than the horses that are on the rail, and a lot of times you're not covered up. So what does covered up mean? Well, we just had the Daytona 500, right? The cars that are drafting behind other cars have to use less gas. Horses that are drafting behind other horses have to use less energy because they're going to be more relaxed. They're sitting right behind a horse who's taking the majority of the wind or the majority of the air into their face, so that horse who's sitting in second or third, sitting right behind the leader, kind of gets a better draft spot. So ground loss is one big one for me. The second is, we'll call it just, this to me is the general trip that you hear, but it's more of like the energy loss. And that is when you start a move and you have to stop, or you are forced, you're pinched back, and all of a sudden you have to give up momentum. That makes a big difference because it's harder for a horse to re-rally, to essentially go and stop and go, than it is to just consistently go. And you're often going to lose multiple lengths in that time, because generally when this happens is around the backstretch or the far turn, when horses are hitting their top speed, when other horses are being asked. And so if you are starting to be asked and you have to slow down, well, the horses that are your main competitors are going to get full speed, and they're not going to slow down. So then you have to re-achieve that top speed and try and go. So that's a big one for me, and that's what I usually mean when I say trip trouble. It means they got stopped at some point. It means they got cut off. It means that something happened in that perspective. The third one is the one that we just talked about. A horse that wants to close is just up against it. The pace is really slow. Or a horse that wants to be on the lead and the pace is really fast. Those set up bad trips for those horses because they have nothing they can do about the pace in front of them. So when I'm talking about trips, those are the 3 main things that I'm looking for in a bad trip for a racehorse.
Yeah, I mean, you laid it out pretty well. I'll just kind of add on to it because that's it. Look, the biggest thing for me, I think anybody can look and go, man, that horse almost fell. You know, got stopped so bad it almost fell. The deal is everybody's going to be on that horse next out, right? So that's almost one you want to, I mean, you can still play the horse, but what Mike was talking about is the big key to this thing. You got to find the trips where you go, you know, that really wasn't a great trip, but maybe not everybody sees it. And so that's the thing. Like if you know a horse likes to sit, let's say 1 length off the pace, right? And the horse breaks really poorly and all of a sudden is 8 lengths behind. Okay, and then still closes and makes up some ground, but gets like 5th or 6th. Some people look at that and go, well, just didn't run today. But you could look at it and go, okay, I know that horse only likes to run, 1 or 2 lengths behind. And now we're 8 or 9 behind. The horse made the same move that he or she always makes. It's just he couldn't pass all of them, right? Usually the horse is trying to pass 1 or 2 in front and make that move and gain 3 or 4 lengths. Well, he gained the 3 or 4 lengths, but he was 5th today. So that actually was not that bad of a race. He ran the normal race. Stuff like that is really what you want to look for. I think a lot of times what happens on the turf specifically is where you can really find that kind of situation. A horse that really likes to sit what I call the pocket. I think the perfect turf, kind of trip at is there's 2 or 3 horses ahead of you. You're on the rail kind of drafting behind them. And then it kind of opens up for you and you get the perfect trip. Sometimes it doesn't open up and you get bottled up and then you have to kind of swing out and then you lose that momentum and you lose the ground. You can look for something like that and go, man, if that just would have opened up, that horse would have rolled. He or she was getting the perfect trip. It didn't open up for him. He didn't get lucky. So those are the things I look for more so than, look, like we talked about with the horse at Turfway, it's like sometimes it's just obvious. The horse almost fell down and kept running, so that's good. But it's the little things like that. And I think we've talked about it a lot. A sneaky bad trip on the turf is chasing the pace right up at the pace 3 or 4 wide. A lot of times people look at it and go, well, it was in the clear the whole time and he didn't make a run. When you're 3 or 4 wide on both turns, chasing a pace, that's actually a really bad trip. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. Those are little subtle things. You talk about making it actionable. That's when it becomes actionable, in my opinion, where you could really make some money on things that maybe not everybody sees.
Yeah, and to your point, like the worst trip in horse racing, in my mind, is when you're outside 2 turns chasing, because the inside horse is using less energy, going a shorter distance of ground, and you're out there having to have a target the whole time and kind of looking at that target and making sure you keep up. It is hard for the jockey to be able to properly get the horse to relax. Like a lot of times you'll see the jockey's heels pointed in, his toes pointed up. That means he's trying to slow the horse down. That's using energy for the horse to try and force the horse to slow down. And then when the feet go flat or even tilt forward for the horse to go, you don't always have the same response as you do. One thing I do want to say, like, I like to trip handicap against horses that get perfect trips too. So you mentioned the pocket trip. Well, let's say it plays out perfectly and you're on the turf and you save ground on the first turn, you're sitting right behind the leader, you save ground on the second turn, you're sitting right behind the leader. The horse that's in second that was chasing the leader on the outsides fades back and you're able to peel right out and you get first run on that leader in a clean trip. Horse racing is partially luck. You don't usually get that trip twice in a row, and you just saw the horse's best possible effort in the best possible setup. Those are the horses I look to try and fade the next time out, because I just am not going to assume you're going to get a perfect trip again. And when you do get those perfect trips, you get better buyers, you get better time forms, you get people who are impressed because the horse will blow a field away. Well, if you don't get that perfect trip, you're not getting those same results. And to me, that's a horse where I'm willing to go against next time out because of that specific trip.
Yeah, I look at that as a negative as well. And the other thing that I think is this is probably a little bit more of an obvious one, but I don't think quite as obvious as you would imagine. Horses that go gate to wire with no pressure that win. Speed. And not only do they win, a lot of times when that happens, they'll win by a very wide margin. And people will go, whoa, that was amazing. He just won by 6 lengths. I'm telling you, the easiest trip in racing and the best way to win a horse race is get out there by yourself. You're out there, you're just cruising along, you're not feeling any pressure, and it's just a walk in the park. They call it walking the dog, and that's kind of what'll happen sometimes. And that, like, just for the recent example of the Chip Honcho in that situation where he just got out in front, he took advantage of a track bias that day, and he was just cruising and he wasn't stopping. And so that's really hard to go catch a horse that way. And that's why, like, I look at him next time. And look, maybe you go to the next race where horses had the lead and it was easy and it looks like he's going to get it again. Well, that's one thing. But you go into the next race and it's like, man, there's a lot of speed in here. Even though he may have won by 6, I know Chip Honcho didn't win, but let's say a horse won by 5 or 6 lengths. Doesn't mean they're going to do it again. When it makes such a big difference if you just have a couple of horses out there pressuring you. You got to fend them off. You're not going to have that kick down the lane. So that's the big thing to keep an eye on for me, especially on the dirt. I think that's to me, that's the biggest one.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of trips that you can see coming. I do think the easiest ones to see coming are your example there, where you have a speed horse who is loose that all of a sudden gets pressure the next start, and where you have, let's say, 3 or 4 speed horses on the turf and there's an outside speed. That horse is in a bad spot because it's unlikely they clear. It is likely they are chasing, and usually in second or third, and usually 2 or 3 wide the entire race. So you can kind of see some of these trips coming. You can see the pocket trip coming as well. If that horse is drawn the 4-post and has that tactical speed, they're likely to be sitting right behind the leader. So you can handicap some of these trips. It's awfully frustrating when you try to and then you're wrong, because that can get you on prices that have no chance, but it is something that you have to at least look for when you're moving forward. All right, we're running a little long here, so we'll fly through the best bets. For me, we're going to kick it off on Saturday. Race number 1 at Santa Anita, 1 mile on the turf. Give me the number 4, Third Beer here. This is a horse where I think that the trip has actually been pretty negatively against this horse the last couple times out. Actually coming out of that race, we discussed the Eddie Logan. This horse was sitting in third that entire trip. But was kind of stuck in third where he was behind 2 other horses and then swung wide, just didn't have it. Now you get the class drop here for Third Beer. We're getting 3-1, and we're getting enough speed here that I think it sets up much more like the Zuma Beach, a grade 3 race he ran second in at Santa Anita, versus that Eddie Logan where there were just 5 horses. So for me, first best bet coming from Santa Anita Saturday, race number 1, the number 4, Third Beer.
Like it. I think that's a good pick. I think I agree with what you're saying. I like the trip setup. I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right, let's head to Turfway Park here. Your first best bet coming from race number 2 on Saturday.
Yeah, I kept it to Turfway. I know a lot of people are going to be playing it with the John Battaglia. Race number 2, I like the number 1, Beezer. We saw this horse last time out, and we saw the horse setting a pretty hot pace and faded, just barely lost, just got beat by a neck and finished second that day. The pace set up in this one, it looks like he's all alone, and I think that is very, very good news for Beezer. So I think number 1, Beezer, the big gray, takes him gate to wire in the second at Turfway.
Yeah, second off the layoff, second time in the barn. A lot of reasons to like the number 1 Beezer in that spot, on top of the fact that most likely going to be a lone leader there. I'm going to go back to Santa Anita race number 7, the Wishing Well $100,000 stakes, 6 furlongs here on the turf. And I am going to go to what I believe is a horse that's going to be lone speed. The number 6, Gratefully here, 2-1 on the morning line for Robert Falcone. This is a horse that's done absolutely nothing wrong. It's gotten better in all 4 career starts, was running at Saratoga and in Aqueduct, went 3 for 3 over there, comes over to Santa Anita, tries these turf here, and runs a really nice race. Sat off the pace after setting the pace in the 2 previous races to get the win, and was able to still get an easy victory by 3+ lengths. Stepping up in class, like that's the big question mark here, but is clearly the fastest horse. So I think Gatefully here can either get the lead or sit in second, and either way get to the wire first. So I'm going to go with the number 6, Gatefully, 2-1 on the morning line, race number 7 at Santa Anita.
Surprise, this is the first time we're taking on a stakes company. This horse has done nothing but win and look really, really good. I think this could be a single. I super like this horse as well. So I mean, 2 for 2, Mike. I think you did good this week.
I do like the international horse, 5-1, number 4, I believe it is. But it's a horse that's sat mid-pack internationally that's now turf sprinting in the U.S. That's kind of a problem sometimes. They're a little faster over here, especially when you could have a horse who is loose. All right, your second best bet, back to Turfway Park, race number 8 on Saturday's card.
Yeah, the race right before the John Battaglia. In race number 8, I really like number 2, Cadenza in this spot. I remember this horse back at Saratoga over the summer. Second race of the career, won at 4-5 and a maiden special weight and looked good doing it. Stepped up to Turfway Park last time out, stepped to Allowance Company, we should say. First time over the synthetic. I thought should have won. Got third, only beaten a half length. I didn't see a huge, excuse really. Didn't run poorly, but I still think should have won. I think it's going to run better here. Second off the layoff. Maybe that's the excuse. Hadn't seen the horse since August. I think this horse looks very, very tough to beat in this spot. Like I said, second off the layoff. I don't think this field is quite as tough as what she faced last time out. So give me number 2, Cadenza, in the 8th. I think she's going to be ultra tough in that spot.
Yeah, I got bumped around a little bit at the start. Should be enough speed for her to chase here. I agree with you. I think she is a deserving favorite there in the 8th at Turfway Park. So Aaron's second best bet there. Number 2, Cadenza, race number 8 on Saturday's Turfway Park card. That's going to do it for us here. Thank you very much for joining us, VSiN at the Track. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, be it Apple, Spotify, or any of those podcast providers. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, head over to youtube.com/VSiN or at VSiN at the Track. Make sure you subscribe, comment, and let us know what you think about questions, comments, concerns, who you like this weekend. We'd love to hear it. For Matt Deutsch, our super producer, not supercomputer, and computer too. We'll give him credit, all the credit in the world there. He's Aaron Halterman. I am Mike Somich. Good luck this weekend at the track.